just want to say first thanks to Alan and the team for getting this all set up. It was the amount of work that's gone into it, especially what we're all after coming through. It's great to see this is all back up happening again, and I think we've a lot to plug in that time that we've lost about the BIM sessions and all that we've missed out. So it's good to see this going, and that's not in my slide, so it's kind of just.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm here to talk about working with standards and the approach from manufacturer to digital product development. Work for Kingspan, so we're looking at Kingspan on a global approach to BIM and content. So a little bit about myself. I'm an architectural technologist. I graduated from Bolton Street in 2015. I worked in Mola Architecture up the road for 4 years, and then I was BIM coordinator, and I was working in Revit. And so what I've done is be able to bring that from an architect's, designer's perspective to a manufacturer, know how to build the content, what they're looking for, and able to assist that way. In between that, I've done the Masters in TUD as well, and my dissertation was on the post-occupancy digital twin. I know it's a hot topic at the minute, digital twins, so that's what actually got me into Kingspan, because we actually do have a digital twin down there, a fully functional one that we've done. So I was able to work on that as well. So again, able to combine all that. And in my day-to-day in Kingspan, there's just some of the things that I am involved in. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through them all, we'll be here all day. But the ones that are underlined, I'm going to look at is the content development, managing the library, working with standards, and then how we're delivering the content and supporting our customers. So a bit to get through, and I will keep an eye on the time. So just going back to Kingspan, this is what we do. We've got 5 divisions, we've got 170 different countries that we're working in, thousands of products, trying to tie it all together. So when we were developing that digital twin for ICON, the Innovation Centre, we had to start by actually finding the representative of our own products to put them in to digitise it. So realised that there was something kind of off, because we had to go to third parties and we had to build some ourselves. So what we started to do was to look at saying, how can we actually start to develop some of the content ourselves for Revit users. We did some research, looked at it was 8% of the market in Ireland global. We also do some work for ArchiCAD and so on. So Revit was the main one, it was my background. So you can see there the level of detail we're getting to. It's fairly complex, but we realised that people have different skill sets, so we tailor for all. So yeah, it was looking at the needs first, customer, and then the business, and then trying to get across the benefits of manufacturer first approach. Because like I say, you start a new project, you want content, where's your first point of call? And what we don't want is that build it yourself, you waste time, you don't have data, and so on. So we started looking at developing our content with multiple levels of detail. So what you can see there is an example of one of our dry design cassettes. It's a facade, 600 by 600, but what we've done is we've looked at the REBA plan of work and identified that there's multiple stages in the REBA plan of work. So if you provide a designer with one element, they might be on looking at preparation and briefing, it might be too high of a level of detail, because what we found that from research was that designers don't always want to get to the LOD 300 level, because they've seen it's over modelling for a job that they might not even win if it's going to planning. They might just want the LOD 200 to have the content in with the data from us. So we've developed at multiple levels, and what we've done is we've looked at identifying it. Instead of calling it the REBA plan of works, we've looked at the LOD. So you've got a 200, a 300, we use a 400 for manufacturing internally, high level of detail, linking to ERP systems, which we were looking at before, and then we've got a 350 if designers want to go to that. But what we're trying to say is that if you have a project need, we can tailor, we can assist, we can support. So you can see there, those cassettes, they're individual. There's an automated curtain wall that we use within Revit. You can shade the cassettes individually. We have them pre-built, so it saves you time modelling, developing them yourselves. So when we started this out, we were looking at the standards that were there. So like I mentioned in my previous background, I was used to working with BS 1192, PAS 1192, and we knew that they were changing to the ISO. So when the ISO came along, it wasn't such a big change, because we're familiar with it and we were starting to build a structure around it. So I've put up that naming convention there. That's the standard from BS 1192, and that's what we were starting to align to. So that's the breakdown of it. So we took that as our base, and we could start to tailor and develop our content with that. So starting to really put the structure on it, and that's what we will look at. So then when PAS 1192 got replaced, we knew that this was the information flow where you get from the PIM to the asset information model. So we knew what was involved, what was required, and we were able to help the designers along that by tailoring content to their project stages. So then when the ISO came in, we started looking, really seeing now there's something, ISO is fixed, it's international, we can start to scale this. How do we scale it? We need a platform that's stable, secure. We've looked at the different third-party common data environments, and we found that for an Autodesk Revit, functionality, we couldn't beat Autodesk Construction Cloud, because not only could you deliver, you could manage, you could support customers by asking them to upload their models, and we could take it from there. So it removes the manual file sharing. So that brought us now into the ISO, which means that global company can now start to tailor these standards, work with the ISO, and start to bring that forward. So there's a bit of work in that. As we all know, the folder structure that's within ISO, and what we're doing is that it's okay for one business. When you start going into 2, 3, 10, 20, you have to educate all the people internally about kind of how to work within these folder structures, or else things go out of sync very quickly. So we started to implement this folder structure, very simple, into the businesses, and we started educating them how to work with it. The team grew, the projects grew, and the need for the customer started to grow as well. So they were familiar with this process, and this also gave us the benefits of working with the Construction Cloud. The folder structure, single source of truth. We could help with your collaboration, like I mentioned, interoperable, mentioned multiple times today, and I think that's really important to get across what we're trying to do from a global kind of manufacturer's perspective. And then, like I say, educating internally and externally where we can, and definitely helpful. So probably wonder, where does all this kind of come with the standards? So like I mentioned, we were looking at the ISO, and this is an example of our reach. And I've only added a few logos here because it was getting a bit out of control. So what we started to do was take that file name that I mentioned earlier, and you can see that in the bottom, it is a green box of my own, but this will start to populate as we go through, and just to show you how we were starting to work with these structures. So if you look at the project, it's your first one, we started to code all of the businesses, and we started to meet the hurdles. So if you're looking at a business that has multiple regions, how do you do that? So we started to add alphabetical numbers after it. So you can see there, in Kingspan Insulated Panels Mexico, they have an English and they have Spanish language translation, so we call it 7A, 7B. That would make sure that the file name is unique and it's identifiable, and we can trace it back. You can see most of our work is in America, so we're dealing with a lot of the companies over there that Kingspan has kind of acquired over time, and starting to get them on board. So that's the first number. And as you get into the originator, so now, for example, we've got the 5 divisions within Kingspan, which is your Kingspan Insulated Panels, your access floors. So for now, we'll focus on the insulated panels, which is the KIP. That takes up the most of our reach, so it's about 60% of our business is the insulated panels. And so for that, I just used the KIP as an example down the bottom. So now when we start to get into the UK and Ireland, which is in the 01, we start looking at the products that are available. So how do you start to kind of code these, and how do you come up, because we were coming up with a mix mash with people calling them different names, and that we were looking at really trying to standardize this. So we used the volume field in the ISO name convention, which meant that we can tailor all of the products to a code. If it's a RW, if it's a top deck, it's TD, RW, AWP, and we can really start to grow that, and it starts to flex and adapt, and plus people can adapt to it really quickly when we're starting to look at it. And so then when we start getting into the kind of the BIM terminology, this is applicable to all regions across the group. And this is what I say when we were looking at, we just base it on the ISO 19650 standard, because if we start to include the annexes for the different regions, we start to kind of have multiple documents, but the base information is the same, which relates to the BS 1192, which transitioned to the ISO. So for here, we start to look at these 3 codes. For the levels, obviously our panels span multiple levels, so we'd include ZZ. it's a 3D model which we're providing, and it's Y because we're a specialist designer. So that's kind of how it starts to flesh those fields out. And now you can see we're kind of getting to the bit where I think is exciting and was kind of starting to raise questions around when we start to look at the numbering convention. So how do you start to number these that tailors back in, that's descriptive, it keeps them unique? So we did come up with a file naming convention. So you can see the two different levels of detail. We can tailor them by using the first digit. We can have multiple cores in our product, so we can tailor them using the second digit. And with the product range, we can, if there's 99 variants, which it doesn't go over 99, we can capture that in the end. So now you can see, for example there, for microwave AWP, I've just used 2001. So it's very flexible, it's adaptable, and enables us to scale. Final one is flexible. So we started just to say, how can we take this and put it so if a user is getting this, they're not just looking at this file name with just letters and numbers. So we started to try to make it a little bit easier for them. So we started looking at our different cores, like I mentioned. So we've got the PIR, we've got a quad core, and now we've got a quad core with the lower body carbon. So we can include them into the file description at the end. So for now, we've included the quad core. And if you look at it, your application, so where is this going? Is it a wall? Is it a roof? Is it a facade? So we can include that in the name as well. So now you can look at it, you can say, okay, that's a quad core wall, and I know what that's for, I know what that file name is, it's unique. And then you add the level of detail into it. This one here is a LOD 300, as you can see, but bear in mind, this file name is getting very long, and one of the troubles that we're having at getting this is people starting to get their head around that. So we do have guides that we help them trying to educate them, but the final bit is the actual version of the content that we are providing, developing internally. Is it a PDF or is it a Revit file? So you can see here there's both examples, and for this example in the naming, I've included the Revit file. But that is what the customer gets. What we do is we take our Revit project, our Revit experience, we build up a sheet, we build up an overview of a project which we can manage and update. That means it's flexible. If we make any changes to the product or the data, it can be incorporated. We talked about data a lot. That's one of the streams that we do. It's broad topics, we won't get into it today, but it probably does deserve another kind of series about what we're doing with data as well. So you can see in the Revit project, we've got an overview sheet. We've got our ISO name and convention in the top left. We've got the description on the right, and we've got the data on the bottom. We've got all of our materials and our colours, our range that's available for that product as Revit family that you can bring in, you can tailor your products to suit. And then we've got a QR code, as we've seen a lot of today, on each sheet. Because the question was, if an architect takes this PDF off, prints it in their office, and there's a URL link on it, they can't do anything with it. But if there's a QR code and somebody likes it, they can scan it. It takes them to a form where they can request content. So trying to get how can they actually access this library easier. And then you can see the small image underneath the logo contains this content here, and that's why it's kind of blacked out. But what you can see is we've made all the thicknesses ranging from 150 back to 40 in horizontal and vertical, pre-made, ready for use, copy, paste into your project, and there you go. So we've added functionality into this already that have learned over time how to make our panels better. So again, this is what the user will be getting, and the data is, like I say, up to date. We use the revision on the sheet to track when the data was updated and published. So again, compliance and all that is covered with that. And then if we start to look at it, so that's kind of one example that I've shown you, taking you through that AWP. But if we start to look at this across the group now, you can see this is the AWP, but this is the lower body carbon version. And then if we look at the data on floor, now you can see it's a different division, but you can see how that kind of follows the same template sheet layout back to your standardization, your protection system, so everything is kind of covered. And the thought is that once a user across the group that's familiar with Kingspan gets used to looking at this for Revit, they'll know exactly what they're looking at and what they can expect from the files. Water and energy. We start getting into light and air, which is, starting to really take off. A lot of work there, and very complex products as well that we need to cover. Eurobond, which is in Wales. Paroc, which is in the Nordics. So we've done the whole kind of Nordic region with the Paroc content, very large product set. So the name kind of numbering system came in very useful. Moran, which is in the US, and it's a single skin facade content. And then we've got ISOCAD, which is in France, and you can kind of, that's the English version, but we have a French and an English version of that as well. So you can see the scale of this, what we're dealing with, and how this numbering system has assisted us actually getting all this done. And if you start to look at reach, so I know when we were looking at it, the scale of this was kind of something that was a bit daunting. We're kind of saying, if we've all these customers, how do we start to serve them with this? And these are all actually regions that we are delivering to. There's a lot more to add, but what I want to show is an example of what the customer gets. So it's what we refer to as a BIM bundle. It's a tailored project specification, and if you want a wall, roof panel, raised access floor, energy or water pump or PV panels for your house, if we have it in our library, we can develop, we can put it in one file, in one location for you to download, and you get it all from there. And that's a good example that shows wall, roof panels, materials, cutting tools to cut openings in your panels as well, along with the flashings and all that is required. And there's another kind of topic here that we're looking at is I get requests daily from designers who are saying we want access to all of your library because we want to store it on our desktop and keep it for our database. But what they're actually doing, if you think back to the core example, if we provide them with all the PIRs and they have all the PIR panels, which is now replaced, in 2 years' time when they go to design the new project, they're using the PIR, the content is out of date, they don't know there's a quad core, they don't know that there's an LEC version of it. And what they're doing is the data that they have at that time, they're using in the project. So what our messaging is now is trying to get this BIM bundle across to say that if you have a project, tailored specification for you will ensure you're working with the latest version of our data. And if the data has to be updated, we go back to the source, we have an automated workflow to make sure that we get the data pulled into it. We can give you the exact content there at the time, and it kind of removes all that. But yeah, I get requests daily for that. But once people get the message, what we're trying to do, and assure them that there's no time delay in them getting the content for the project, we can assist them better. So that's the kind of the internal face. And so we're also, with the products that we do, we're covering multiple regions. So this is a project, a charity project that we're doing with Goal. It's a hospital in Honduras that's using panels from the UK and is using panels from North America. Doors are coming from the UK as well. So kind of organising this and delivering this to a BIM level 2 standard and pulling all the quantities and linking them into our ERP system for manufacturing. So you can see we're doing it for ourselves first before we do it for all of our customers. So we're all on the same path and we're all kind of learning. So that is going to be starting production soon, and yeah, great to be involved in that one. So I was able to help with the design on that one as well. So that brings us into kind of the next steps for us kind of looking forward. So as a manufacturer, getting ISO certification is kind of, it's something that we're wondering what's the best way to do, and we're in talks with multiple people here. We're looking at BRE, we're looking at NSAI, looking at BSI, look what's the kite mark, what does that do, or Operam Academy, is it individuals that need to get certified as our internal education base of users start to grow. So again, there's no kind of clear meaning, which is good, like we talked about it earlier, is kind of what is the next steps, because you can see what we're doing, but what we have to do is kind of educate internally first and then they start to grow. But in 3 years ago, there was none of this conversation happening about ISO standards or BIM. So you can see where we've got to, where will it be in the next 3 years. I think we will get to certification, and that Honduras project, if we start to deliver services, we can definitely start to get certified on that. And not just certification, one of the things that we're looking at is a product configurator kind of selector. So now that we've got the content developed, it's to a standard, it's all unique, we know what the file type is, we know where it is, we know exactly what it does, we can start to build on it. So we can do multiple things. So instead of the manual kind of BIM bundle approach where we talked about at the minute, we're looking at kind of automating that, streamlining that. So come to the website and build your own bundle based on this system. And it's not just going to be a file selector, it's going to be built on Unity, so you'll be able to see what your panel looks like, put in your thermal, your acoustic values, what you're looking for your project. It'll filter it down, kind of all that good stuff. But the main thing is that this was all built on the standard. So without that, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. It would have been kind of information everywhere. So that is happening, and that should be available kind of maybe next year. I think we're looking at it, but it's well on the way. And again, another reference to the QR code. But this is SMEs, and how can we help SMEs kind of a system? And that's how we can. So if you can scan that, it will bring you to a form that we have. You request your content, and a member of our tech exchange team will get back to you. It'll give you the content that you're looking for, and if you need any more assistance, we can get on a call and we can help you out. So again, it's how... Yeah. So how are we assisting our SMEs? We deal with all our architects across Ireland, UK, and we're happy to do webinars. We're get on board, like I say, and deliver it all through BIM 360. And the good thing is that most of the designers are familiar with BIM 360 already. So if they're not, they can give us a call. We can help them out. And that is it, kind of short and sweet. Again, just the summary, and I think we do have questions.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, thanks very much, Jonathan.